Good afternoon. Let me introduce the speaker of this session, Dr. Punyashri Panda. She works as Assistant Professor of English in IIT Bhubaneswar. Dr. Panda comes with 18 years of teaching and research experience. She has more than 30 national and international research papers and book publications to her credit. She won the prestigious WISC Summer Residential Fellowship in 2014, the first and only Indian to have won it so far. The same year, she also won the IWL Fellowship offered by Harvard University, USA. In the last 15 years, Dr. Panda has trained both the academia and industrial personnel in India and abroad. Her current areas of interest include post-colonial world literature, cross-cultural communication, eco-fiction, and memory studies. Panda's in-depth article titled Indigenous Humor in Thomas King's The Back of the Turtle, an Eco-Critical Perspective, published by Penn State University Press, appeared in Studies in American Humor in 2020. We welcome you all, ma'am, for this session. And let me have a small introduction with ma'am. Ma'am, it's nice to see that your background goes with literature, but again, your interest has been on ELT too. Seeing your profile with CFL, that's why I was just thinking that interests me a lot while I was calling you.
Thank you, Dr. Farid. And you have to actually sail many boats to make things happen. So, over a period of time, I have developed an active interest in language teaching. Then when we talked about the session last night, you mentioned that many of the participants are from the medical profession. So yeah. I actually had to relook my presentation last night. So I worked a bit more, brought in some modifications so that I hopefully will be relevant to most of the audience here. And thank you for putting all this effort for conducting FTPs. I know how difficult these are to conduct. So, and I hope your participants are having a good time. So can we start the session now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please, ma'am.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Let me just share the screen. I'll just stop the video for a moment and start it. Okay, is the PowerPoint visible to everybody?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, yes, ma'am. It is visible.
All right. So a very good afternoon to all the participants. I would really love to see their faces. You know, we have been talking to computer screens for the last 1.5 years. So it always is a pleasure to meet people, even if it is virtual, even if it's only the computer screen that works as the connect, as the bridge between the participants and us. I would really like to see their faces, and I hope that they do turn on their cameras when they interact, and I have the opportunity to meet them virtually. So the topic that Dr. Farin mentioned to me was pair interactions and group discussions. I believe it's a very viable topic that's of, what should I say, very practical uses. And I'm sure many participants here are teachers who have been teaching in different disciplines, not necessarily English, but they are probably teaching social sciences, they're probably teaching sciences, probably teaching medicine and engineering, and all of them need to benefit from this session. So the idea is that we talk in a general sense about pair interactions and group discussions, and we do not necessarily just limit it to language teaching. Is that fine, Dr. Farin?
Yes, ma'am, of course.
Okay. Yes. So let's begin then. I would really like to know if participants have some expectation, like what is it that you want to focus on in this session. Well, this is just an idea that will help me navigate the session further. But if you do not have any such ideas, that's fine by me as well. We can go ahead and explore what's on offer in this session. So let's begin then. So the first thing that we are going to talk about is preparing for pair interactions. And I want that you should be interacting, because when we talk about interactions and there is no interaction, it is not going to help. So I would really appreciate participants to come up with their experiences, sharing their experiences here, because this is a peer platform where everybody, many of you probably are teachers who have been teaching for more than 20 years now. Some of you could be teachers who are just starting out. Some of you could be in mid-career, and all these varied experiences can be of extreme help to each other. I believe that's the best form of learning, to learn from each other. You know, it's not that I have a couple of slides to show and then you see it and you forget it. So let's just focus on our own experiences. Let's just go back to our classroom when we were teaching students in the physical form. Well, you can also focus on the online teaching form as well. However, I would like to come up with, I'd like you to come up with your experience of pair interactions, because you know, the ongoing situation of the pandemic has brought the challenge of teaching online, and the challenge is further enhanced when we talk about pair interactions or group interactions in virtual platforms. So we will come to that later. I would right now like you to focus on these two questions that I have in mind for you. First is, how do you prepare your students for pair interactions? And the second is, what goes right or what goes wrong? All right. So we need to focus on both the right and the wrong, so that we maximize the rights and we minimize the wrongs. Right. So let us hear from some of the participants how they prepare their students for pair interactions. So participants, can you please raise your hands and switch on your cameras and speak? How do you prepare your students for pair interactions? Yes, Fani Kumari ma'am, can you please go ahead?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, this online. Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I have attended your class also. Yes, in the previous FDP.
Okay.
Then I told about you in the last meeting also. You are very active. And just I have learned so many things from that FDP. I started conducting this group discussions and other activities in my lab.
Okay, so you were there for the June program?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, okay.
Yes, then I asked my students, I started conducting group discussions online in my English lab classes. Fortunately, some of the students, they are very active because they speak without observing the faces of other people, and that's why they get rid of their nervousness and they participated very well. But some of the students, they simply give the cause that there is a network problem and my camera is not working, and they avoid participating, madam. Both pros and cons are there in conducting these online interactive sessions.
Okay. So, all right. So this is your recent experience, right? The experience that comes from teaching online, right? Yes, so yes. I hope that we actually go back to physical teaching as well, to teaching offline, but online teaching is here to stay, and we cannot deny that this has changed the way we teach forever. So what Fani Kumari ma'am mentioned is about the difficulty or the challenges of teaching online, and then trying to create these platforms for pair work or group discussions, right? Okay, now let me hear from some other participants about their experience of teaching online or offline, and trying to make pair interactions or group interactions. Can I get some responses, please? Yes, Pravina. Pravina, madam. Yes, can you switch on your camera if you can? Please do.
Ma'am, I'm really sorry, but here the network strength is too low. So if I switch on the camera.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm teaching in Department of Biotechnology in a college from Thrissur, Kerala. So
Okay.
here in our university, from 2015 onwards, a new subject has been introduced. In fact, two subjects have been introduced. One is life skills, and in the second semester, they'll be learning professional communication. And
Okay.
this is actually introduced to improve the communication skill of the students. So this is where the communication improvement was actually taking place, how the students were able to communicate orally and also in written form. So from my experience, what I felt is when we do this pair interactions, ma'am, a few activities we do conduct. So the way I have been conducting is, first, when we do not have any idea about the crowd whom we are addressing, I'll simply or randomly create pairs, because I don't know who is good in communication and who's not. So once and then we observe what is happening. So from that, I have felt that a few of them, as the madam who has just spoken, a few of them are good in their communication, a few of them are quite shy. This is a classroom activity, ma'am, not an online session, not an online session.
Okay.
So next time, once I identify that a few students are not good in communication or they have a bit of hindrance in them, what I do is I try to pair them with a student, with another student who is having average communication skill, so that they will have a chance to speak out. One disadvantage that I have found is, if I try to pair a student who is having good communication, very good communication, with a student who is a bit of introvert or who doesn't have good communication skills, the student B is unable to improvise. At the same time, if I pair that person with another student who is average in their communication skill, then I find that they are trying to communicate with each other and they are trying to help each other while that interaction is going on.
Okay.
This is my experience now. Thank you.
That's very nice. You're actually doing a lot of things which should give you the right results. So what is your, like, does your expectation match the results? What you do in class and how it comes up, does it match?
Yes, ma'am. To some extent, I feel that it has improvised the students, and this is happening in online sessions also, but not the pair interactions which you have just mentioned. That is not happening actually. What I'm trying to do is, we are giving them a topic, or we are one of the activity that I've recently given is, I have asked each and every student in the class to go and watch a TED Talk.
Okay.
And once we give the TED Talk, in the next class, I've asked them to give a small write-up on what they have done through online platform itself. And the next assignment I have given is, in the coming classes, they are going to speak about what they have understood from the TED Talk. With their cam on, they have to do, because otherwise, as madam told, they will not switch on their camera. So I'm going to conduct that as an assignment. It's like I don't have any other way to make them.
So, okay. So when you are doing this, when you are assigning them this TED Talk, do you want them to work in pairs, or do you assign them in pairs, or do you ask them to do it on their own and present the write-up in the classroom?
This time I have asked them to do by their own, because since it is online mode, it is not possible for me. I don't know how far it is going to be good. But last year and all, when we had students, contact classes were conducted in between during pandemic. For 3 weeks of contact classes. During the time, I had done pair interactions and group discussions and all those things. And I found this strategy a bit helpful, ma'am, because the students were trying to express what they want to do.
Right. So we have to, as teachers who have been thrown into this whole challenge of the virtual classroom, we have to think on our feet sometimes. And what you have been doing in the physical classroom, some of it can also be brought into the virtual classroom. We will talk about that later towards the session. Let me just hear the responses that other teachers here have. Okay, Dr. Ruma De, would you like to please share your views?
Yeah, and good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Like I just took an this time, like online mode itself, it's offline itself, the environment chapter, since I'm a biology stream, it's very difficult to make the children interesting even in an offline mode. So now what I'm doing is that in an online mode, I'm dividing them into groups and giving them a topic on the hazards of the pollutants, since we reside in a refinery area. So what is the effects of the air pollutants which you are seeing it every day now, since it's you all are confined inside, what you're observing the changes. So that way, like, how is it affecting it? Or how are you being affected by this? I'm not talking of the virus, but the pollutants which are released by the refinery.
Okay.
So you see some yellow thing, particles, sulfur particles here gets deposited, ma'am, on the leaves. So like, did y'all ever think that why does the growth of the plant does not take place? So y'all could make a study on it and put a plant and which is not in a refinery area, the same plant y'all can grow it here and find out the difference. Why is it so? So that way, like, if interaction is carried out, I found that children, they really moved out, and the people, the children staying out of the refinery, they would bring that this is the length of the plant, we got it, and this is your length. So that means the pollutants are really being affecting the environment out in this township. So that way, like, I'm trying for this environment chapter to install a bit of curiosity in the mind, so that in due course they could even say, who knows, they may solve this problem also.
Very
That's
nice.
what I was
Actually, at what level do you teach? You teach children who are
11,
aged
12,
between
11,
and
yeah.
12, which is a very difficult age to teach, you know, because they
Yeah.
already know a lot of things, and
Yeah.
they think that they know more than what they already know. So that's a
Yeah,
very difficult learning stage in life. And to take them outside the classroom and to engage them in some kind of a productive activity that can bring in a result in learning, in terms of learning goals, is a task in itself. So that's a brilliant idea that you have been implementing. And I think in
even
biology
like
you have
mobile
so many
phones
options
also.
that you can explore, you know, because the whole world is yours. You can explore each and every element, each and every component, and try to bring it in. Well, one thing about parent group work, which we would also be talking about later into the class, is that we have to be flexible about our content. All right. So if you're planning to say cover a whole chapter using pair or group interactions, this may not be possible. This might have some results, but which we may not show on record. All right. So, but then we have to do something that takes children outside the classroom and outside the houses right now, because they are all inside their houses, almost like we have almost all had a prison term, right? So that's something that we need to find. Yes, so let me hear more participants who would probably be interested to speak about what their experience is with pair interactions. Do I have more participants to speak about it?
Ma'am, can I?
Yes, please.
Actually, ma'am, I'm teaching in college, BBA and MBA students.
Okay.
And what I have been doing in the offline mode, that was role playing, which I felt that, you know, as to give them a situation and give them a role to play. And they were happy because they were excited, because it's like a sort of a drama or acting also for them. So they would interact with each other. But this is quite a challenge when I'm taking online classes, because, you know, the students, if I give them also a topic, because basically pair, if I do make them pairs and talk to each other, they have the tendency to write down, you know, and read it out. But when I was taking physically, you know, they were present in my class, and I was, you know, we were doing these sort of activities, more of speaking were, you know, they could speak more. But here, you know, online classes, I find they have the tendency to note down immediately. I give them a topic, and as internet is easily available, you know, information is at their fingertips. They, you know, collect the information, and they have the tendency to write and speak. And if you ask them to switch on the video, they say they have internet problem. So pairing in the online classes is a problem, but offline classes, of course, physically we could do that, and a role play. And then, of course, even in you know, like debate, one-to-one debate, not in a, you know, like giving them a topic and to say which they would say for the motion, against the motion, but not in a group. That way pair activity was much more effective, and they could come out of their shyness and they slowly gathered the confidence to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Ghoshal. Thank you very much for this feedback. Well, the point is that we all know that teaching is more effective possibly when you can actually interact in terms of physical terms. But then we are not sure when we are going back to the physical classroom, and we have to make things work while we are here. So we're talking about pair interactions and group interactions because we're right now focusing on pair interactions. One thing that you can do, even if you say, for instance, you take something as a role play, you can probably, this is something that I have done in my classroom and it has been pretty effective. You can ask them to dress up as somebody else, right? So maybe if it's an occasion of celebration, say if it's a national holiday that's looming in the corner, or if there is a community festival that's coming up, you can ask some of the students to come dressed as another person, as another character, and present to the class in terms of pairs. You can also ask them to become characters from books, all right? Characters from books or characters from movies. They absolutely love that, because that gives them some kind of a semblance of interaction, some kind of a semblance of the physical classroom, and it always it always encourages them to come forward and speak and switch on their camera as well, because they're dressed up. They want others to see how they are dressed up, and in the process the cameras are switched on. They look at each other, giggle at each other, then there is some kind of a cohesion that happens. This is possible with a little more effort. We can all make it happen. So now let us look at some possible means and strategies regarding pair interactions. So I would say that we can term it as best practices. You have to choose the right sort of activity. So depending on what level you teach, what is the discipline that you are teaching, and what chapter or what concept or what theme you want to cover, you have to ensure that if you are putting them in pairs, there has to be enough scope for them to work in pairs. So remember that all activities cannot be done in pair work. Say, for instance, if it's a worksheet that you want them to finish, probably the best thing to do is to ask them to finish it and upload it somewhere where you can check it, or send it to by email or put it in a drive, rather than putting them for a pair work. Because if it's a worksheet, they would do it individually. There is no need for putting them in a pair. So there has to be a clear benefit to working with a partner. So if somebody can do it individually, if it is doable on their own, they would not like to pair. So what kind of activity should I give that will ensure that pair work is necessary? There has to be some kind of interdependence, some kind of depending on each other, some kind of connect, mutual dependence that can be of help when the activity is on the process, and there teamwork can be, pair work can be done. All right, short activities or longer activities with clear steps. If it's a short activity, it's likely to work in a pair. If it's a longer activity, but there are steps that are clear, if you mention what is to be done, what's the step 1, what's step 2, step 3, and what's the result, then it can work well. But if it's a more incongruous activity, it's an activity that has many facets, many dimensions, and that does not really entail itself to a typical kind of result, then pair interactions may not be the best choice for such possibilities. So some examples can be problem solving. If, say, you have given them information gap activity, or if you have given them some kind of comprehension, so you have given them some kind of a text or discourse that they have to comprehend, and they have to sit down together. They have to find out means to make it happen, make it understand to each other, make it comprehensible to each other. Then pair work can be very, very helpful. Even project-based activities can also be given to students at different levels. It can work for school students, it can work for intermediate students, it can even work for advanced students. You can even use project-based activities in graduate and postgraduate classes. And they are quite successful across spectrum, across disciplines. But the point is that what is that you are choosing as a project? So if the project that you're choosing as is something that is very cliche or that is very used up, it's not likely to give you more results. It's not likely to give you the results that you would really like to see. So you have to be innovative about the kind of projects that you are giving. So for instance, if students have started to complain about, I don't want to write anything about the pandemic. I don't want to participate in an activity that talks about the pandemic. So, because initially there was probably some kind of a novelty value to this when we're talking about the pandemic, something that has happened in the last 100 years, and we are all experiencing it together. Students did want to talk about it. But after a while, right now, there is a sense of fatigue. There's a sense of tiredness if it is related to the pandemic. So nobody's, especially in my classes, students of graduate and postgraduate level, they do not really want to talk about the pandemic. They want to talk about what lies ahead, what life offers in future. So you have to choose the topic, you have to choose a project that will be relevant for the students, that will keep their interests alive. Choosing the right topic is what is the key for making pair interactions work. The next points that I have in mind is to give clear instructions. If you are teaching in a large class, especially, the possibility of instructions getting muddled up or instructions getting lost in translation, lost in communication is very high. So before you set foot in the classroom, you have to make sure that there is a solid goal in mind for the pair activity. The pair activity cannot happen like, okay, today I'm in a mood for pair activity, let me give some pair activity to students. You have to plan it, and you have to ensure that the instructions are absolutely clear, that there is no scope for any confusion in between the activity, because if that happens, they will keep asking you questions in between. They will keep asking you new information, new rules, new comprehensions, and the whole plan will become a messy affair. I'm sure some of you might have experienced sometime in but then something happened, some kind of a confusion occurred, and the possibility of the learning goal was dismissed. Right? So would you like to tell about that? Do you have something in mind? Like there was an activity that was going on fine in the classroom, and then suddenly there was a breakdown. And if you go back, that's why I asked what went wrong. So some of you have already talked about what went right. I would also like to know what went wrong. You know, teachers here, Funny ma'am and Twista ma'am and Ruma ma'am, they all talked about what went right. Okay, I would really also like to know if something went wrong when you were doing a pair interaction, when you were doing a pair activity, and then suddenly there was a breakdown. There was a chaos. There was absolute confusion. And then how you bring it back to control, how you ensure that the learning process continues. Anybody would like to share that? See, we have to also focus on the wrongs as much as we focus on the rights. Unless we know the wrongs, we will not be able to avoid it in future. All right. And sometimes if even from the wrong, you get a new result, you get a new direction, a new dimension. So I would also like to know if there was a pair activity that you planned and it was all going fine, and then suddenly there was a breakdown, and how you handle the breakdown. Would you like to talk about that? We have 83 people here. Why don't we get more responses when you have a question? No, nobody wants to talk about the wrongs. Okay, right. So
Madam, can I share?
yes,
Yeah.
please,
See,
do.
what we do is we give last semester we have that mini project. So I have
Okay.
divided 3-4 people for a project. But then no, after some time I came to know some students are totally taking advantage. The other students, they're not doing any work. After the 4 people, only 2 people are doing, and these people are nicely, coming and presenting as if they've done it. This I found out. So those
Right.
problems are there. Like a group project, no, some exploitation is happening. Some goody students, they do all the work, and other people know they make adjustment, you do everything and all, come on. And somehow they do it, and finally I came to know that it's not a proper evenly shared kind of work. So
So what did you do about it?
Evaluation also. Then I really gave a less mark to people who didn't contribute much, and I gave more marks to people who really contributed. This problem I had last time.
Okay. Okay. Do you think there was any other way you would have been able to handle it? Other than giving them differential marks?
This offline mode, madam, I don't have any direct contact with them. Only Zoom meeting, like we meet, we give them instruction, we expect them. One group did very well. The 3 people I divided, they really equally contributed. One person put after the introduction, other one review of literature, other one prepared the Google form and all. They had a very good unity. So
this was for what discipline do you teach, sir?
I'm taking counseling psychology for the students.
Okay.
I'm a clinical psychologist, professor of clinical psychology. We have a course UG PG in counseling psychology. There we have the last semester, we have the project work.
All right. Okay. So, and then did the students realize that their differential marks were because of the way they contributed?
Yeah. So they kept quiet. They didn't object at all. They realized their mistakes. So I never any complaints from the anti-angle. So they were I didn't fail anybody, but naturally I gave good marks to people who really done the work.
Okay.
The Viva, they have to do a Viva, madam. There I could easily find out.
Okay. So the Viva was online and face to face? Yeah,
it's online only. Okay. We have an external examiner also. 3 of us will come and they are supposed to present in PPT, and then they are supposed to answer the questions. So easily we could find out.
Okay. So you could realize who have done the work and who have not. Okay. Well, that's a very good example. So you see, there was a course correction. So there was an activity given. Then it was going on smooth for a while. Then the facilitator, the teacher realizes that there is some disharmony occurring somewhere, that there is a possibility of malpractice or possibility of some students benefiting from some other students' work. And then the course correction was that at the end of it, there was a one-to-one meeting, even if it was virtual, and the teacher could find out how much contribution each of the students have given, and accordingly they have been rewarded. All right. So anybody else with a similar experience or something that is as striking as that? Yes. Please go ahead. Fani Kumari, Dr. Pravina. Yes, please. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. In our syllabus, we have group presentations and individual presentations, madam. Individual presentations, they present their topic and they get marks. But while coming to group presentations, I also face the same problem as the sir who has told about some students, they work very hard and some students they didn't. Then after observing that incident, I asked the students to present. Every student must present a slide, and I offered pens to them. And whenever they come to college offline, I'm ready to give those pens to them. And whenever the people they present, I asked all the students to switch on their mics and give them applause. So many people, they like that appreciation from all the students there. Then the next day, almost all the people, they presented their topic. In that way, I got success, ma'am.
That's very nice. So even as, a very small task, if you look at the task itself, but it is participative in nature. So everybody has to contribute for the whole class to succeed. This is called whole teaching, right? So this is called whole teaching because everybody contributes for each other's success in a way. This is a very good technique used. Well, I congratulate you for that. So Dr. Pravina and then Dr. Ruma, they.
Hello, ma'am. I had also spoken about the same thing earlier. I'm specifically speaking about the pair interactions, ma'am. I conduct that for the subject professional communication and also for life skills. And therein, one of my experience, it's actually the classroom experience, ma'am. When we do these pair interactions, in one of the sessions, I found that one student, he is not ready to speak at all. The reason was because he was coming from such a background wherein good communication, he could not actually obtain that or procure that before coming to college. He was from such a background, but even though I was trying to help or I was ready to help, he was very reluctant and he didn't want to speak up. That was one very big issue I had, because I wanted every student to speak properly, but he was not cooperating, and that I found it very difficult to convince him that it is okay, because it's just an interaction between the two students whom I've selected. When I do pair interactions, different students, I'll be dividing them into different pairs. They will be speaking to each other, speaking with each other on a particular topic. It's just for improvising the communication skill. But this is one big trouble I had, because I was not able to convince the student that it is okay to be wrong. It is okay to have not good. If we don't have a good communication skill also, it is okay. It's all about how much effort we are able to put in and improvise us. So that was one big difficulty I had to face. So I had to spend a lot of time convincing him to speak up. But finally, he started to speak. That was a good part which I felt. But since you told, it was getting derailed because he was not speaking.
How big is your classroom, Dr. Pravina? How many students in a classroom, in your class?
Ma'am, in one class, we have 60 students, 60.
Okay.
So when we conduct activity, they'll be divided into different groups, and some 3-4 groups I'll be focusing on. Others will be asked to do the reference work. That is how I conduct it now. So that individual attention can be.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a good size for the classroom to be to individual to individuals come up for individuals to come up and work, and for the teacher to also take note of it. So yes, that's a good size for the classroom. And the example that you gave about a particular student coming up, it's also possible if it's a 50-60 student classroom. If the classroom size is larger, say for instance, if the classroom size is 100, 150, 125, then the possibilities will be different, and the way you have to handle them would also be possibly different. Let us hear our two other teacher friends what they have to share. Yes, Dr. Dev, would you like to please go ahead? Roma ma'am, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Like even we have also projects. Like what the same problem even I do face, that they do, one of them does and another one doesn't do. So what I had taken up the scheme this time is that I had every day what they're doing, they have to just send it to me in WhatsApp what they're doing it, and they have to make a call also. Not only telling me that, so I can ask them that what they have done, how they have done. In that way, like I come to know that who has done it and who has not done it. So accordingly, then I give the marks. I said, though external will give the marks, of course, I said some percentage is there even in my hand. So of course, accordingly, I do the marking. But yes, they really became aware that hum sabko karna hai. Madam chhodne wali nahi hai. That has come.
Keeping a tab. Keeping a tab on, right. So monitoring, that is called monitoring.
Regular track. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. So that's called monitoring. Actually, the term that we use in
monitoring
TLT is monitoring. Yes.
Yeah, though it is a big class.
And so monitoring is a very essential part of pair and group interactions. We will focus on that as well. Yes, we have Vishal sir. Sir, would you like to please go ahead with what you want to share?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, in fact, I'm from the hotel industry, and I'm a assistant professor at IHM Aurangabad. So normally we have a group of student strength is 60, and because it was online, it was very difficult for student to know each other. So at the beginning, what I did, I make a group, syndicates group of 10 people each, and just given a free hand for them to choose whatever the topic they want related to the subject, and they can able to present. Now, while presenting, I have just marked them and understand that who are the one who has taken the initiative and the person who has not involved themselves directly while doing the work. In the second stage, what did I just break down the group again with the 5 files. Now, in that presentation, I have already marked the students who were not very much involved. So I have made them the leader for that particular group, that you have to lead the group with this particular topic. And given the parameters that they have to present at least uh, attending these particular parameters while they are going to present. Now, in the third stage, what I did, I make up again paired with the two students, either 2 students in each group, because this was the 10th, so one was out. So I have interact one with the another group. So with the pairing of the two, where I have given a more, you can say, authority to the students to mark their colleagues. So if 2 students are presenting, though I am marking, and I have given the authority that they can also mark, so that they can understand that if they are marking, what is required them to present. So this is the way where I just try to develop them as per the skill is concerned, as per the mental development is concerned, as per the teamwork is concerned, as per the authority is concerned. So this is the way that I have just done in my class.
That's very nice. That's very nice. So, okay. So the examples that we are getting here is focusing on interaction and then assessment, how you are assessing the students after the interaction has taken place, right? So, yes, assessment is a very essential part, and follow up. What are you following up after you have done the interaction, right? So you have to, the point is that the more clearer the instructions are, the more likelihood of the activities becoming successful. The next point is to continue with instructions. Once you have explained the activity, also demonstrate, become a model student to the students themselves, and ensure that there is a set time limit for anything for a task that is given to be done in pairs or to be done in groups. Time limit is very essential, and time limit cannot be compromised. This is something that is non-negotiable. So once you have set a time limit, you have set a time limit because you understood that the task will take that much time. So after that, there should be no negotiations done on time limit. Normally, students will have a tendency of extending or asking for extensions of time limit, and that is not required to be entertained, because you have thought about the task. You have understood that the task will take 1 hour or 10 days or 20 days, right? So after the time limit is set, there is no negotiation possible in the time limit. That's very, very essential, and a lot of teachers do compromise on that aspect, and later on it becomes difficult. If you're taking a class in the offline mode, if you're in a physical classroom, you can also use a time limit, time set by using some kind of a sound effect or alarm, stopwatch. And if you're doing it online, you can give them a set amount of time for inside synchronously, asynchronously, whichever way you are teaching, you can choose to give set kind of time. Next is that you have to help them choose their partners creatively, because some kind of a connection has to be there for these people to click as partners. So low first creative solutions that you can use for making them to work is like, if it's a physical class, asking them to line up in order of some XYZ, like line up in order of your roll numbers, or in order of your height, all right, or line up in order of your sections, something like that can be done. Similarly, in the online classroom, You can ask them to line up in a lot of their cities, the cities they come from, or the color of t-shirts that they're wearing. Some kind of fun way to create pairs can be used. You can also use other props, like line up in order of the phones that you use or the device that you use. All of these can be used to create pairs. Then ensure that control is with you. With pair work, you can get a very noisy classroom. Whether it's online or offline, classroom can become noisy. You have to develop a certain tolerance for noise if you are encouraging pair work. But also ensure that in all the noise, the learning goal is not compromised. All right. And when you are setting time limits, you are not you're not entertaining any negotiation. So similarly, with noise also, there should be a set level. Ensure that after a certain point, noise will not be tolerated, whether online or offline classes. Online classes also can be very noisy if everybody starts talking at the same time, and then they can lead to chaos. Some chaos is possible, unavoidable, and desirable even. All right, some chaos is even desirable, but after a certain point of time, you have to ensure that you are in control, you are in charge of it, and how you do that is absolutely up to you. It depends on your own professional judgment as to how you go ahead for doing that. Another thing is that every classroom will always have some fast finishers. You know that some of them finish fast. You know who they are also. So for them, you have to have a plan B. You have to have something extra for them. All right. So in pair interactions also, some pairs will finish earlier than other pairs. Some pairs will finish last. So you have to time it accordingly, and you have to ensure that there is some other activity lined up for those who finish fast. Okay, next is when we are talking about group discussions. So I would like to know if you have, now don't limit yourself to thinking that group discussion happens only in language classroom. It can happen in any classroom, any discipline. Group discussion is a very vital classroom strategy that is underused by many other disciplines than languages. So I would like to know if you have the tendency to use group discussions in your classroom, or do you believe in more TTT? TTT is teacher talking time. All right. I'm a firm believer of minimal teacher talking time. The more the teacher talks, the less learning happens. All right. So we have to always strive towards minimizing TTT, which is teacher talking time. All right. So I would like to know if you have used group discussions in your classroom, and how it went, like what went right, what went wrong. See, we have been talking about pair interactions. Now I would like to know group interactions or group discussions where you have probably used a strategy that went right or that went wrong. So yes, can we hear from my participant friends, please?
Yes, madam.
Yes.
I will try to say, we conducted group discussion, but we have an arrangement where there is a classroom and there is a attached cabin, like from window, I can see students interacting. My involvement in the group discussion is less. I just give a topic and I come and sit in my chamber and they are discussing and we are observing. Many times what happens that after 15-20 minutes, there are certain individuals who are not talking. So at that time, my interference will be there and I will encourage them to speak up, because it is our duty that each and every student should be encouraged to speak rather than a segment of students. So in that respect, a good response is received. The actual communication problem is language. Students who are reluctant to speak in English, that those students we have to encourage. So in that process, I have succeeded quite a lot.
You teach English or you teach some other discipline? What do you teach?
I'm management teacher, man.
Okay, you're teaching management. So you will be giving them topics drawn from management, right?
Generally case studies. We
Generally case
discuss
studies.
case
And
studies.
you mentioned that you would observe them from a distance,
Yes,
through
yes,
a
yes.
window or something.
Yes,
right?
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And my question is that when you were outside the classroom, this is encourageable. Like this is a very good activity to leave the students on their own for some time and to observe and to ensure that they work independently. This
Yes.
also brings their level of confidence higher. My question is that if you're going outside the classroom, how do you ensure that they are talking about the case study? Because you would be only depending on lip sync, right? You cannot hear them. Can you hear them?
No, I can hear them. I can
Oh,
hear
you can
them.
hear them. Okay. then
What
that's
happens
fine.
that if I am there with them, certain
Okay.
students are not ready to talk. They are
Okay.
afraid or might be some preconceived notions that if
Right.
I speak, something wrong will be there.
Okay.
And this I learned from industry. I was
Yeah.
working as medical
Yes, this is very
representative.
nice. Yeah, my concern was that if you are able to hear them, see if you are
Okay.
looking at them from a distance, like a Jew enclosure.
No,
so
no, no.
This would be tough because you don't know whether they're talking about the case or they're talking about the evening plans, right?
And the last 10 minutes, I come and I give my opinion also on the case,
Yes.
which can be collaborated with their statements. We keep
Very
a
nice.
board also,
Yeah.
whiteboard, where
Yes.
students can write their statements.
Very good. That's why we talk about when we talk about ending the group or pair interactions. This is a very vital point that Dr. Iyer has pointed out. This is very important that you end the task as well when you are given the task. Now, coming to the best practice for group discussions, you need to know your reason for using groups. You need to ensure that the possibility of the group is explored and that it is utilized in the right way. It is not that just because there are students, you have to make them groups. There should be, as we discussed in pair interactions, that there should be a clear benefit as to why they would collaborate in a pair. Similarly, there should be a clear benefit as to why they would collaborate in a group. And your students also will work better. They will depend on each other more if you share this reasoning with them. You can tell them that if you work in groups, you gain this or that advantage. And then they will be more likely to give more of themselves to the activity, right? You also need to keep your classroom in mind. Think carefully about how students will be physically arranged in groups. Like what is the size of the physical size of the classroom? All right. And if it's a virtual classroom, what is the number? What are the numbers? What kind of platform you're using? What kind of camera or audio resources are available? This is also very, very important when you are planning an activity. If you're planning it offline, then you have the physical structure of the class. If it is an online activity, then the platform being used and how much of exploration can go ahead with the platform. That is something that you need to keep in mind. Will it be easy for groups to form and for all students to be comfortable? So are all students comfortable? Now, this is a very vital point that some of our teacher friends have already raised here, that all students do not participate at the same level, do not contribute at the same level. This is something that is going to live with us, especially if you're teaching in an Indian classroom. You're likely to get a heterogeneous classroom more often than a homogeneous one. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. And you have to ensure that the comfort level of maximal students is touched upon, is reached. All right. Will the students be able to hear one another clearly? So this is what I was talking about when we're talking about pair interactions or group interactions. The class is likely to become a noisy classroom. So ensure that everybody can hear each other, even if they're talking at the same time, even if you encourage that they talk at the same time, please ensure that everybody is able to understand, comprehend each other, so that there is no learning gap and there is no societal hierarchy that becomes evident in a classroom. Like some people are speaking all the time, some people are silent all the time. This has to be handled very, very delicately. And if you want to moderate the activity to control the volume, how can you moderate it? Do you have some strategy in mind how to moderate it? Do you know how you will keep some people shut and you will ensure that some others speak? at any given point of time. That is something that the teacher has to absolutely keep in mind. What is your classroom? What is the make of the classroom? What is the exact character of your classroom? And accordingly plan your group discussion. You can start with quick icebreakers, especially if it is the beginning of a term, if students are meeting each other for the first time, whether in offline or in online mode. If they're meeting for the first time, and if there has been no bonds developed as of now, you can use this opportunity to create some kind of a cohesion in the groups, because this cohesion is going to help you later when you try to form groups. So ensure that this is included, that quick icebreaker activities are done, especially in the very beginning of the session. You can also do icebreakers in the middle of the session, but probably they will not be as effective if you do them as if you do them in the beginning of the session. And I assume that many of the teachers, many of the institutes might be just beginning their sessions now, the semesters now. So this is probably a good time to start with an icebreaker. Some example icebreaker activities that came to my mind were answering a would you rather question. So would you rather X, Y, Z, and you can fill it answering a funny question. You can set a question for everybody, and then everybody answers, and the responses that create some kind of a question. This is also very helpful in an online situation, because you see, in the online platform, the only way that they interact is to see the faces on the computer screen. So answering a funny question can actually give a human touch, a human feeling to the virtual classroom, and can probably ensure the creation of a learning community. Right, a learning community is very essential for the learning to happen organically, and this can be done if you use some of these tactics of icebreakers in the very beginning of the session. Trying to say their name backwards is a very popular way of using an icebreaker. So you probably have not tried it yourself. You probably have not ever thought about calling yourself backwards, right? So this is very funny, and this creates a roars of laughter, creates a very positive energy in the classroom, and you can extract learning in that kind of an atmosphere. Sharing their favorite stuff like animals, apps, songs, movies.
त्याच्यात म्हणतो की amount of gross salary declared in schedule salary is less than the amount of gross
okay, I think Dr. Ayers, can you please mute yourself? Thank you very much.
Yeah,
okay, and then ordering themselves by birthdays, by height, by shoe size. There are many options you can actually explore when you go about icebreakers. Okay, to continue with group discussions, filler activities for early finishes. I have already mentioned that early finishes can cause trouble sometimes, because if they're finished early and they do not know what to do, they do not have anything to fall back on, they will create nuisance value in the classroom. So to handle this, you have to ensure that filler activities are there. So filler activity doesn't have to be some new activity or a whole new plan. It can be an extended activity. Say, for instance, if you have given them a group discussion topic and they're working on it or they're writing on it, and then there are some people who have finished it already, then give them an extended activity based on the same activity, based on the same concept or same topic. Do not give us something that is strikingly different or strikingly contrasting to what the other students are doing. This can cause two things. One is that the other students will feel that they're losing some learning because they're finishing later than the others, than the early finishers. And the early finishers can think that they're being excluded from the community by being given a task that others are not doing. So stick to the original plan, stick to the topic that you have given, and probably give some extended activity. Ensure that collaboration is encouraged, especially if it's a group activity that you are doing. Ensure that there is a certain code of conduct, that they are all behaving professionally with each other, they're behaving civilly with each other, that language and the sense of formality is not compromised. All right, so they should be respectful to each other, they should be respectful to the teacher, and there should be an atmosphere of encouragement, positivity, and inclusion in the classroom. No students should feel excluded because they are dressed in a different way, or they're talk in a different way, or even that their learning is differential, that they are slow learners or they are fast learners. So ensure that there's certain kind of a bond that you can create between them. Talking about past experiences always helps in building up a community. So this can be used by the facilitator, by the teacher, to ensure that everybody who is there in the classroom is able to contribute and talk about their past experiences without any bias or without any threat. All right. So this can also be done anonymously. Sometimes if you use note cards and ask them to write anonymously, they will be happy to write, and they can even come up with experiences that are helpful for others, that are helpful for themselves, and that creates an atmosphere of trust and harmony. So collaboration can be encouraged in many ways. And how you create a sense of collaboration is obviously up to you, but with a little effort and with a little bit of what should I say, push to the students, it can be achieved. All right. To ensure collaboration and encourage involvement, interdependence, and a fair division of labor. Now, we have already heard one of our participant friends here talking about how his student used to complain about, or used to come up with the problem of unequal distribution of labor in the group activities. So ensure that there is the way you design the activity is such that everybody has to participate, and everybody has to participate equally. All right, this is easier said than done, and no matter how much you try, some outliers will be there. Some of them will definitely not work at all. Some of them will definitely toil a lot harder than you expected them to, but that is how it is. So the teacher's task, the teacher's responsibility is to ensure that the design of the task is such that everybody has to contribute. Okay, the next part is strategies to design pair or group interactions. So how you divide students into pairs or groups is a difficult affair, because people, I'm sure this could be an experience that many of you would like to share here, that when you want to go for a group activity, the students say that, sir, ma'am, we want to come up with our own groups. We don't want you to make the groups. Right. So because this is something that gives them a chance to work with their friends, with people that they think are like-minded, or with people with whom they have a certain connection. All right. So this is doable. Sometimes you can ensure that they are doing activities along with their friends, along with people they are comfortable with. But random assignment of groups is also equally important. When you are randomly assigning groups, you are exposing them to more perspectives. You are exposing them to difficult situations. You are exposing them to divisive thought, conflicts, and negotiations, thus training them for the real world. Okay, so whatever discipline you're teaching, whether you're teaching medicine, you're teaching engineering, you're teaching language, you're teaching sciences, you're teaching social studies, whatever discipline you're teaching, it is always advisable that the teacher should use a mix of random grouping with collaborative or harmonious grouping. So harmonious grouping is where people of similar mentalities or similar caliber come together to work, whereas random grouping is where the teacher has control over the grouping sample, the grouping, and the end product of such random grouping is expected to match the end product of a harmonious grouping. All right. Normally, the assumption is that if people work in harmony, if they are working in teams where they know each other, then the result will be higher than if they do not know each other, if they're working with strangers. But the teacher's task is very well cut out here. Whether it's harmonious grouping you're choosing or you're choosing random grouping, the result, the learning goal accomplished at the end of the task has to be the same. So there you have to put in your effort. Next is ensure that the collaborative work that you are encouraging is in multiple forms. So pairs, small groups, large groups, online, offline, synchronous, asynchronous, all of this should be used in the classroom. Now, hereupon, I would really like to know if you were aware of if you have been doing something that is fitting both synchronous and asynchronous learning. So, online synchronous means something that is going on live. Say, for instance, what we're doing right now. Asynchronous is with something has already been done, and the student-teacher interaction depends on something that has been done in the past and how to extract some learning from that. So I would like to know if you have been using all these collaborative work forums or these forms in your teaching, and how successful or unsuccessful you have been in doing that. Can you please come up with? We can get some responses. Then we have to move ahead. Can I get some responses where you have used, say, small groups and large groups and online synchronous, online asynchronous, offline? So let me hear from you. No? All right. I'm not getting any response.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I tell my students to prepare PowerPoint presentation on any chapter, and they do it in a group. I suppose there are 40 students in my class, so there are 4 groups, and they come up with 4 different topics. They divide the chapter. I only divide the chapter into 4 sections, and each group presents a PPT, and they speak on it. So this is how it is done.
So the grouping is done by you, and this is done in the classroom, or this?
Yes, online class.
Inside the classroom, not before the class.
No, inside the class.
Okay, and what level do you teach at?
Class 9 and 10.
Class 9 and 10. All right. So how is the response from the student side?
Very good, very good.
Okay.
So they present the slides very
beautifully. I do, madam. Actually, as she said, the seminar topic we give to the students, we divide into 3 groups. Okay. So one person will do the introduction part of the seminar, the other one will do the middle part, then the third one will do the critical evaluation. So this goes well. They do very well, actually.
Okay. And then you swap the task. Do you swap the task between the groups?
Yes, yeah, I do that.
Right. Okay. Which means that every student has participated.
Yes, yeah.
And every student has a task cut out for them.
Yes, right.
That's very nice. Right. So we should also know that we have been hearing to many of the teacher friends here who complain that there are some students who don't participate. There are some students who do not switch off the camera, who do not contribute, who do not submit. Right. So that also we have to take in our stride, because some of them might contribute after a while. Right? After they have drafted the material, they have totally understood it, then they will speak. Some of them will quickly speak. So that has to be also accommodated, especially if you are encouraging team learning, group learning. All right. Other students will defer to others in large groups. So if there are larger groups, they will not speak. They will just stay quiet. But if they're working in pairs, then they will probably work better. So all these roles that come up, this has to be valued, and this has to be included. You have to be inclusive of, you have to be open to all sorts of experiments as far as pair and group interactions come to play. Also, another thing is that earlier into the session, we talked about how we should not negotiate on time limit once we have decided. But that does not mean that you give them time that is very less. Say for instance, if something has to be done in a week's time and you give them 3 days or 2 days, they will not come up with the best result. They will not be able to give their best. So ensure that this time given is sufficient for the pair or group to work. So keep in mind that when you're giving them pair work or group work, content has to be compromised in the sense that you cannot cover the whole chapter in a couple of days. If you take lectures, you will cover the whole chapter in 2 days or 2 classes, but that is not possible if you're giving them pair or group work. If you're giving them pair or group work, time will be more, learning will be slower, but learning will be uncompromised. Learning will be very authentic. All right. So whether you want to go for the authentic or you want to go for coverage of a certain amount of content, depends on which situation you are in terms of your teaching situation, right? So say if the end of the semester is closing in, there has been enough pair work that has been done, and right now this is time to cram up all the content and to be examination ready, then probably you have to focus on lecture method. But if you can afford to, then maximize pair and group work and minimize TTT, which is teacher talking time. All right, that is how students become more independent thinkers and more creative in terms of their solutions as well. And it's very essential that you plan a follow-up session. One of our teacher friends here, I think Dr. Iyer spoke about a follow-up session. You know, it's not enough that you give them a work, that you have assigned them a task and you want them to come up with it. The follow-up session is much more important, because normally we think that I have given a task and my job is over. No, the task has to be done, and then the student has to know where they have done well and where they have not done well. And they also have to understand their own status in the peer community. So that happens when a follow-up session is done, when the students' results can be discussed in a more generic sense, in a more uniform manner, and that their concerns are addressed. All right. Group size is something that you need to understand.
Can I ask a question to you?
Yes, please.
Ma'am, like such kind of interaction like projects and all, it's okay. But I tried for such kind of activities, group activity in online mode. By giving a particular group, I had divided it on the basis of roll numbers. And say one group has been asked to prepare a PPT on a particular topic. So dividing the lesson into groups and all. But what constraint which I faced was that rest of the students, they used to bunk the classroom. That problem I had faced in the online mode, which of course in offline they cannot do it. They have to give a patient hearing and ask questions to them. But this problem I had faced. Means it was that group remained present and the other group remained absent.
Yes, so I would just try to bring certain kind of an equilibrium between online and offline classroom for this particular example. So in online mode, what happens is they bunk the class, right? They go away, or they probably do not switch on the camera. They're logged in, but they are not there. All right. In offline mode as well, if you have given a task for a particular group, then the other groups are probably sitting there. All right. Some of them could be listening, but most of them will also be switched off in terms of their contribution. All right. So how do you manage that? What we do in our classrooms, especially if it's a group activity where only a portion of the class is engaged and the other portion is not engaged, you have to give them a task. So you give them a sheet in which they will probably mark the presenters on the basis of their content, and then they will question them, and then they will vote for them. So it should be some kind of a role, some kind of a gameplay where everybody has a role assigned, and then the audience also becomes focused and they do not leave. And there is some point, like if my assessment and a particular group's assessment matches, then they will have some reward. So if I as a teacher have a certain kind of assessment of a particular group, and then the audience who is trying to make a judgment on the basis of the presentation of the group is also matching with the teacher's assessment, then the audience has a reward, right? So these are some of the perks that you can offer them to be participative in group discussions. This is challenging, but it can be done. All right, with a little bit of
idea.
Yes, so with a little bit of planning, you can do that. You can give them a sheet, show them a sheet, or send it to them beforehand, and you tell them that when this particular group is presenting, the other people will assess. All right, and all assessment happens there. They ask questions, everything. They become very, very active, and then they have to send their assessment sheet to you. And whoever matches with the teacher's assessment sheet, that can be done in the next class. So teacher's assessment sheet is shared with the class, and whoever has matched will get a reward. Now reward is also different. So reward can be something like you give them something extra to read, or you give them one extra point for the assignment done. That's also up to you. All right, so I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Right. And then how big or small your group will be also will depend on what activity you have in mind. So sometimes you can have a group that is probably 4-member group. Sometimes you'll probably need a group that is larger in size, a 10-member group. So for instance, if you're giving them some kind of a field work, you will probably give them in larger groups, because they will go together, they will have fun, they will bond with each other, they will learn about real world situations, and then they will come up with some results. If it's a classroom activity, you will probably give them make a smaller group. A smaller group will work wonderful in a classroom atmosphere. The less skillful the group members, the smaller the group should be. This is by Gross Davis, who says that the lesser skill that they have, the more number of people have to be there in the group for the group to succeed.
Thank you.
Also strategize to ensure diversity. Ensure that people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different calibers, different learning goals are together in one group. That can also give you the right results for a proper group. How will you ensure that? If you have enough data about them, maybe you can collect a data card from each student on the first day of class to gather information about their backgrounds, knowledge, interests, etc. And then you can also ask them to express some preference, like who would you like to work with, 2-3 students' names that they will give. And then when you make them pairs, you can keep that in mind. Both of this can be done. When you're introducing the activity to pairs or groups, we are actually coming very close to the end of the session, and I should just probably give you a little bit time of interaction at the end. So I'm just trying to rush up. So you should share your rationale for using pair or group work. As I have already mentioned, you should ensure that the students understand why they have to work in pairs or why they have to work in groups. If an activity is given, why should they participate in groups or why should they participate in pairs? It should be clearly, justifiably given to them so that they absolutely give themselves to the activity. Have students form pairs or groups before you give them instructions. This is interesting and a very important information, that ensure that the group or pair is already formed before the instructions are given. Because if you're giving them instructions and then you form the pairs or groups, there will be a lot of chaos. So make the pairing first or make the groups first, then go for giving the instruction part. Facilitate some form of pair or group cohesion. So once you have assigned them into groups or pairs, ensure that they talk to each other, small talk, conversation, some kind of a bonding that they are to do with each other, that it is done. Tell them what task it is and what is the end result that you expect. And set ground, how they should talk, how they should behave with each other, what are the limits, what are the parameters, all of this should be decided and shared with the students. And after that, even after that, if they have questions, they should be free to ask. Do not stop them from asking questions. When you are monitoring the pair or group interactions, when students do their work, you ensure that any kind of questions raised is solved amongst themselves. Do not try to intervene unless you are asked to, unless the student comes to you. Listen for trends that are emerging from the discussions, especially if it's a topic that you think is very, very vital for the course comprehension. Ensure that subsequent follow-up discussion is also arranged for them to understand what they have done and how they have achieved the task. Do not interfere with group functioning. Some teachers are very hands-on. You know, they want to ensure that every single step the student is taking is the right step. This is not necessary. You can intervene only in intervals. You can intervene only when it is absolutely required. You do not have to guide them all through the micro steps that they might be taking in their learning process. So give them some freedom, give them a little bit of free hand, and afterwards you can always claim back the control that you want to have. Do not expect low from your students. Expect a lot from your students. You know, if you push them hard, if you bring them to a challenge, they can do a lot more than you give them credit for. So express your confidence in them. That creates a certain kind of atmosphere, especially if they're working in pairs or groups. And if they're working in pairs or groups, whatever they do, whatever small achievements, small victories they have, they feel very proud of it. They gain a sense of achievement. So do not rob it from them. Don't share what you know at the first opportunity. Okay, wait for them to participate, wait for them to come up with their own solutions. If not, then you intervene. If you come up in a pair or group that is experiencing uncertainty or disagreement, avoid the natural tendency to give the answers or reserve the disagreement. If they're fighting, let them fight with each other. Unless it becomes out of control, unless it becomes absolutely something that you have to intervene to ensure that the classroom atmosphere is not compromised, don't give in. Do not intervene in every micro step of learning. This is a very, very important line that you should keep in mind, that I will not talk to them, I will not intervene unless I am asked to. You from teacher have become a facilitator, right? So teacher's job was to just talk to the students, talk down to the students. So teacher talking all the time. That's where from where we got this teacher talking, the TTT thing. And that has to be minimized. And your role as a facilitator has to be maximized. You have to become a facilitator rather than becoming a talker. If necessary, clarify your instructions, but the students should struggle and within reason to accomplish the task. Okay, so that is a very, very famous linguist, Race, talked about that in about a couple of decades back. So he says that if you want your students to excel, let them struggle. If you want your students to stay average, give them everything that you know. Right. So clarify your role as a facilitator. If students criticize you for not contributing enough for their work, you tell them that this is what you expect from me. And this role has to be clarified from the very beginning. The students should not come back running to you for every single doubt or every single question they have in mind. They have to struggle. They have to find. If they are not able to, then they come to you and you resolve that. All right. Having said that, I would also say that if there is an inaccurate response, if there is inaccurate information coming up, handle it carefully. Ensure that it does not escalate to other students. So coming to the last part of the discussion, ending pair or group work, provide closer to the pair or group activities. Students love to see how the teacher perceives it. So ensure that any activity you have done in pairs, any activity you have done in groups, the student understands where they have reached in terms of the learning goal. So end it with a follow-up session in which students do group reporting. The group reporting can be done both orally as well as in written format. So in orally, they can choose a leader from their group to tell their experience of the activity or what they have learned or whatever. The written one can also be done in a group, right? Everybody can contribute a couple of sentences to make small report, a short report, like say for a 2 pages report can be done. If it's a 5-member group, a 2 pages report can be easily be done. So choose which suits you better, oral reporting or written reporting, but ensure that there is some kind of reporting that's done at the end of the task. Model how you want students to participate, how you want them to talk, how you want them to interact with others, how you want them to handle the task. Every single thing you can be a model. And don't mind sharing your stories, your own faults and follies, and your what should I say, high points of inspiration as well with your students. Be ready to acknowledge and value opinions that are different from your own. Some of the students will say for instance, if you are a person who likes to be ritualistic, but you have a student who does not like to be, respect that. Do not try to mold your students to become yourself, to become a reflection of yourself. Respect their opinions, even if it's different from your own, and ensure that you're sharing with them the right stories and your own critique of your work. All of this can be very, very helpful to them. Okay, let me just come to the very end. Connect the ideas based in the activity to course content and objectives. If you're giving them some task that is not relevant to them, that is not connected to what they're learning in the course that you're teaching them, they will not feel connected to you as well. They will not feel good about participating in the pair work or group work if it cannot be a bridge to their learning the course objective. So ensure that whatever you have given in terms of pair work or group work has a certain connection, has a certain linkage with what you're teaching them. If there is any misconception or if there is any inaccurate response, it should be corrected by the teacher. You should not think that, okay, I have been asked to minimize intervention. Minimizing intervention does not mean letting the student stay with a doubt or stay with wrong concept. All right. So ensure that any such happening, stop it there so that it does not escalate to other students. All right. Okay, this is the last slide. The benefits of pair work are many. It gives learners more opportunity to speak, and it gives them a sense of confidence. It can enhance the pace of the lesson because some students will feed on others. The weaker learners will feed on the faster learners, and it can be a holistic, wholesome learning for all of them. Some of them who will have a hard time understanding will be falling back on friends who are easy learners, who are fast learners, and they can learn better. The teacher can move around the classroom with ease, with a good opportunity to monitor the discourse. But there are also drawbacks, like weak learners can probably get into a cocoon, get into a shell, and they will not come out of that. So that can be a problem. Introducing pair or group work where individual autonomy is compromised can also slow down the patient. Passion. If somebody thinks that I can do it individually, why am I working in groups? Then they will not participate in the group activity. If the teacher loses control over the activity, like if you lose control over your classroom, over students, over the activity itself, then pair and group interactions can lead to chaos and confusion in the classroom. The quantity and quality of participation can vary significantly from learner to learner. This is something that we have been focusing on throughout the discussion, that some people do not participate, whereas some others participate very actively. So this is a very vital drawback as well of pair and group interactions. Okay, so I hope I had more time to speak about the other aspects of pair and group interactions, but this is all that we have. So we can take a couple of questions. These are the references, and if you have any questions, I would be very happy to take them. Do we have time, Dr. Farin? Do we have time for a couple of questions?
Yes, ma'am. If the participants are interested, we can take.
Right, right.
One question I want to ask you.
Yes.
I discussed about group discussion. So one thing, how can we encourage students to respond? There are still many students who are reluctant to answer or to reply in discussion. How can we encourage them? What can be
Yes. So
what can
first
be
thing
done?
is that, thank you for the question. First thing is that we need to know that the task that we're giving them is relevant to them. Many a times, many reluctant speakers, many reluctant learners actually become very activated if they realize that there is something in it that they can take home, that
Okay.
they can actually use in real life situations. So bridging the classroom to realia, to real life, is a very important task that a teacher has to do. And if you can make it relevant to them, if you can show them the importance of participating in this particular activity, I'm sure they will be more active in the classroom. This is something that I have observed over a period of time in different set of classrooms. This has always worked well. If you ensure that, say, normally if you give them a very academic topic, they'll probably not participate. Okay, but if you give them a very simple task, like you, I think you're teaching management, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
you give them something like, you have a party next weekend, and in the hostel, and everybody has to come up with a list of things that they need to have for the party, and everybody has to come up with a list of responsibilities that they will take up, and they have to justify their responses. Now, this will probably activate them better than making them talk about the pitfalls of Indian economy, right?
Okay.
I'm just giving an example.
Okay.
You can make it more discipline specific by ensuring that your students are participating in it. All
Okay.
right. So
Thank
I
you,
hope
ma'am.
that
Thank
can
you.
work. Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Do you have any more questions? So shall we call it a day then? Thank you very much.
Okay, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Fareen and PDPM IIIT for Jabalpur for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much. And take care, stay safe. So can I...
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
This was a really wonderful session. I know this is a very dry topic, but again, if at all, if we are engaged with the activities, we know what strategies we need to implement with that. So almost we have been covering all the tips, all the strategies over there, all the techniques over there. But again, just for a point of information, I just need to reveal one and only if at all the collaboration between the teacher and the student happens nicely, these activities will work wonderful. Otherwise, it may not.
Yes.
That is the most important point. Even the teacher should be interested and the students should also be more interested.
That's
in this
why I kept on
activity.
saying that it's your effort. It's your effort, because we are not sure how much effort the student is putting. But as a teacher, we have to ensure that the effort is from our side maximal. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. And I hope the topic being dry does not mean the session was dry. So
No, it was a wonderful
It was a
session.
good
It was
takeaway.
nice.
It was really a very good session, ma'am. Informative
Thank you.
also.
Thank you for having such active participants who
Great
made my
session.
day. And I hope to see all of you in future as well in some other platform. Thank you. Have a nice day and have a great FDP.
Thank you, ma'am.
Enjoy
Thank you.
your virtual stay.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, once I like to say thanks to Fareen ma'am also. She has organized such a wonderful FDP for us, and she has invited a wonderful and knowledgeable resource persons to share the informations related to teaching. So I am really thankful to Fareen ma'am to provide us such a good opportunity to all of us.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is
And
more
the
possible only the experts have accepted that. So all the compliments needs to go to resource persons also. Again, without the strength of the participants,
coordinator has to
nothing
be.
can work.
No, the
It went
coordinator
on,
has to really
ma'am.
put in a lot of effort.
Sorry for interruption. It went on mutual understanding also. Due to only the mutual understanding and the commitment, it got the success.
Yes. Thank you. So
Thank
may
you.
I leave now,
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Fareen?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Doctor, can we leave now?
Sir, let me have a snap, sir. Screenshots. Please,
Oh,
will you please switch on your camera, everybody? Please switch on your camera.
Ma'am, I don't know why I cannot switch.
Ma'am, I have enabled, so everybody can switch on their camera. Audio and video is on. Yeah.
Somehow it is not happening.
Ma'am, is this okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Madam?
Yes, ma'am.
Shall I leave, madam?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
We'll
ma'am.
join tomorrow at 10:30.
Okay, ma'am, may I leave?
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you so much,
Okay,
sir.
thank you,
Thank you
ma'am.
all.
Zoom
Marine ma'am.
Ma'am.